What's up, Sigma Warriors? Welcome back to Official Sigma Male, the only channel that cuts through the noise and delivers raw, unfiltered truth about what it really means to be a Sigma man in today's chaotic world. Today, we're diving deep into something that will separate the real Sigmas from the wannabes. The 6 phrases that a true Sigma male would never utter, and more importantly, why these words are completely toxic to your Sigma mindset. Here's the thing. Most men walk around unconsciously sabotaging themselves with their own words. They speak like sheep, think like sheep, and wonder why they end up living like sheep. But not you. Not anymore. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to break down each of these phrases that instantly reveal someone's beta programming. And trust me, once you hear these, you'll start noticing them everywhere, in your workplace, in your social circles, maybe even coming out of your own mouth. But that stops today. This isn't just about what not to say. This is about rewiring your entire mental framework to think and operate like the rare, high-value Sigma male you're destined to become. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Why? Because the content on this channel is specifically designed for the 1% of men who refuse to follow the crowd, who value independence over approval, and who understand that true strength comes from within. If that's you, then you're in the right place. Let's get into it. 1. I desperately need everyone to like me. The first phrase that would never come out of a Sigma's mouth is this pathetic plea for universal approval. And let me tell you why this is mental poison for any man who wants to live authentically. A true Sigma male understands a fundamental truth that escapes most men. You cannot be everything to everyone, and trying to do so will make you nothing to yourself. When you base your self-worth on whether other people like you, you've essentially handed over the remote control of your life to strangers. Think about it. When you're constantly worried about being liked, every decision you make gets filtered through this question. Will this make people approve of me? And that's exactly how you end up living someone else's life instead of your own. I once knew a guy. Let's call him Mark. Mark was talented, intelligent, had great ideas, but he was absolutely obsessed with being liked by everyone in his office. He would change his opinions based on who he was talking to. He'd laugh at jokes he didn't find funny. He'd agree with ideas he thought were stupid. And you know what happened? Nobody respected him. Even worse, he lost respect for himself. The Sigma male operates from a completely different paradigm. He understands that respect is infinitely more valuable than likability. He knows that some people will naturally resonate with his authentic self, while others won't. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's essential. When you stop needing everyone to like you, something magical happens. You start attracting the right people. People who appreciate your authenticity, your boundaries, your real personality. You also start repelling the wrong people, energy vampires, manipulators, people who only like the fake version of you anyway. The Sigma knows that if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. He has core values and principles that don't change based on his audience. He's the same person in a boardroom, at a bar, or alone in his apartment. This consistency creates a magnetic presence that people either love or hate, but they always respect. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're in a group setting and someone makes a joke that you find offensive or stupid. The people pleaser laughs anyway. The Sigma either doesn't react or calmly states his position. He doesn't need to be aggressive or rude. He simply doesn't compromise his values for temporary social comfort. 2. I can't accomplish anything without constant help. This second phrase reveals a dependency mindset that's completely antithetical to Sigma psychology. The Sigma male is defined by his self-reliance and his ability to figure things out independently. Now let me be clear, this doesn't mean Sigmas never accept help or collaborate with others. They absolutely do. But there's a massive difference between choosing to work with someone and believing you can't function without them. The person who says, I can't accomplish anything without constant help, has essentially declared themselves incompetent. They've positioned themselves as permanently subordinate to others. They've made themselves a beggar in the marketplace of life. A Sigma male approaches challenges with what I call resourceful independence. When faced with a problem, his first instinct isn't to immediately ask for help, it's to figure out how he can solve it himself. He researches, experiments, learns, adapts. He treats every challenge as an opportunity to expand his capabilities. Let me give you a real-world example. Say you want to start a business but don't know anything about marketing. The dependent mindset says, I need to find someone to do all my marketing for me because I can't learn this. The Sigma mindset says, I'm going to spend the next month studying marketing fundamentals, testing strategies, and building this skill myself. This doesn't mean the Sigma won't eventually hire experts or collaborate with partners, but he does it from a position of strength, not weakness. He understands the fundamentals himself, so he can make informed decisions and isn't completely dependent on others. This self-reliance creates several powerful advantages. First, you become incredibly adaptable. When circumstances change, you don't panic because you know you can figure out new solutions. Second, you become more valuable to others because you bring strength to relationships rather than neediness. Third, you develop unshakable confidence because it's based on your actual abilities, not other people's opinions. I've seen guys transform their entire lives by simply changing this one belief. Instead of saying, I don't know how to do that, they start saying, I don't know how to do that yet. It's a small change in language that represents a massive shift in mindset. 3. What will other people think of my choices? This third phrase is perhaps the most insidious because it seems reasonable on the surface. After all, we live in a social world, right? We should consider how our actions affect others, right? Wrong approach, wrong mindset. The Sigma male doesn't make decisions based on what other people might think. He makes decisions based on what aligns with his values, goals, and authentic self. There's a massive difference between being considerate and being controlled by others' potential opinions. When you constantly ask, what will people think? You're essentially making other people the CEOs of your life. You're giving them veto power over your dreams, your choices, your authentic expression. And here's the kicker. Most of the time, people aren't even thinking about you as much as you think they are. I remember working with a client who wanted to start a YouTube channel about vintage motorcycle restoration. He had genuine passion, real knowledge, and a unique perspective. But he kept saying, what will my corporate colleagues think? What will my neighbors think? What will my extended family think? He was paralyzed by imaginary judgments from people who probably wouldn't even watch his content. The Sigma male flips this script completely. Instead of asking, what will people think, he asks, what do I think? What aligns with my vision? What feels authentic to me? He understands that you can't control people's opinions anyway, so why let them control your decisions? This doesn't mean Sigmas are reckless or inconsiderate. They absolutely consider the practical consequences of their actions, but they don't let the fear of judgment prevent them from living authentically. They understand that people will always have opinions, and those opinions say more about the people holding them than about you. Here's a practical framework the Sigma uses. When making a decision, he considers 3 things: his values, his goals, and the practical consequences. Notice what's missing. Other people's potential opinions. Those simply aren't part of the equation. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it actually makes you more attractive to others. People are drawn to individuals who live authentically, who have clear direction, who aren't constantly second-guessing themselves based on social pressure. 4. I'm just mindlessly following what I'm told. The 4th phrase reveals a follower mentality that's completely incompatible with Sigma psychology. Sigmas are independent thinkers who question everything and make their own informed decisions. This goes way deeper than just workplace dynamics. This is about how you approach all the rules and shoulds that society tries to impose on you. The average person accepts most social programming without question. They follow career paths because that's what you're supposed to do. They buy houses because that's what successful people do. They get married at certain ages because that's what's expected. The Sigma male questions everything. Not because he's rebellious for the sake of being rebellious, but because he understands that most social conventions were created by and for average people living average lives. If you want an extraordinary life, you need to think beyond conventional wisdom. Let me share a powerful example. Most people accept the traditional career model. Go to college, get a job, work for 40 years, retire at 65. The Sigma male looks at this model and asks, does this actually serve my goals? Is this the most effective path to financial freedom and personal fulfillment? Or am I just following this path because everyone else does? This critical thinking often leads Sigmas to unconventional choices. They might become entrepreneurs instead of employees. They might travel the world instead of buying a house. They might invest in Bitcoin instead of traditional retirement accounts. Not because these choices are automatically better, but because they've actually thought through their options instead of just following the herd. The key here is informed independence. The Sigma doesn't just reject authority for the sake of it. He evaluates everything through his own lens of logic, values, and goals. He might end up making some conventional choices, but they're his choices, made for his reasons. This independent thinking creates several advantages. First, you're more likely to find unique opportunities that others miss. Second, you develop stronger decision-making skills because you're actually exercising them. Third, you become more confident because your choices are genuinely your own. 5. I require endless external validation to feel worthy. This fifth phrase exposes a validation addiction that keeps men trapped in emotional dependence. The Sigma male has developed internal validation systems that make him emotionally independent and unshakable. External validation is like junk food for the ego. It feels good in the moment, but creates long-term dependency and weakness. When you need other people to tell you you're good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, successful enough, you've made your emotional state dependent on variables you can't control. Think about social media for a moment. How many men refresh their feeds obsessively, checking likes, comments, shares? They post something and then anxiously wait to see how people respond. Their mood for the entire day can be determined by how much engagement their post receives. This is external validation addiction in its purest form. The Sigma male has done the internal work to develop self-validation. He knows his worth isn't determined by other people's opinions, achievements, or approval. His confidence comes from internal sources. His values, his growth, his authentic self-expression, his ability to handle challenges. Let me give you a practical example. Say you give a presentation at work. The validation-dependent person immediately starts scanning faces for approval, asking colleagues what they thought, feeling anxious until they receive positive feedback. The Sigma evaluates his own performance against his own standards. Did he prepare well? Did he communicate his points clearly? Did he handle questions professionally? His assessment is internal. This doesn't mean Sigmas ignore feedback. They absolutely consider input from others, but they filter that feedback through their own judgment rather than accepting it as gospel truth. They understand that praise and criticism are often more about the person giving it than about their actual performance. Developing internal validation is like building an emotional immune system. External negativity can't devastate you because your core confidence isn't dependent on others. External praise is nice, but it doesn't make or break your day because you're not addicted to it. 6. I'm terrified of spending time alone with myself. The final phrase reveals a fear of solitude that prevents personal growth and self-discovery. The Sigma male not only tolerates being alone, he actively seeks and values solitude as essential for his development. Most men are terrified of being alone with their thoughts. They constantly need noise, distraction, other people's energy to feel comfortable. They can't sit in silence for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. They equate being alone with being lonely, and they'll accept terrible company just to avoid solitude. This fear of solitude is actually a fear of self-confrontation. When you're alone with no distractions, you have to face your real thoughts, your real feelings, your real dreams, your real fears. Most people find this incredibly uncomfortable because they've been running from themselves for years. The Sigma male understands that solitude is where the real work happens. It's where you process experiences, gain clarity on your values, develop your vision, and connect with your authentic self. It's where you separate your own thoughts from the noise of everyone else's opinions and expectations. I know successful entrepreneurs who schedule regular solo thinking days, entire days where they don't interact with anyone, just think, plan, and reflect. They understand that their best ideas and clearest insights come from these periods of solitude. Solitude also develops emotional independence. When you're comfortable being alone, you stop making desperate social choices. You don't stay in bad relationships because you're afraid of being single. You don't hang out with people you don't actually like just to avoid being alone. You don't say yes to social events that drain your energy just because you think you should be social. The Sigma actively cultivates this comfort with solitude. He takes solo trips, eats alone at restaurants, goes to movies by himself, spends evenings in quiet reflection rather than constantly seeking stimulation. This isn't because he's antisocial. It's because he values the self-knowledge and emotional strength that solitude provides. There you have it, Sigma warriors. The 6 toxic phrases that immediately expose someone's beta programming and weak mindset. Every single one of these statements represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a truly independent, self-directed man. Remember, being a Sigma isn't about being antisocial or arrogant. It's about being authentic, self-reliant, and uncompromisingly true to your own values and vision. When you eliminate these phrases from your vocabulary, you're not just changing your words. You're upgrading your entire mental operating system. The world is full of men who think like everyone else, speak like everyone else, and consequently live mediocre lives like everyone else. But you're different. You understand that real power comes from within, that approval from others is nice but never necessary, and that the strongest foundation you can build is an unshakable relationship with yourself. Start implementing these mindset shifts today. Pay attention to your internal dialogue. Catch yourself before these limiting beliefs slip into your conversations. And most importantly, remember that becoming a Sigma is a daily practice, not a destination. If this content resonated with you and you're serious about developing an authentic Sigma mindset, then subscribe to Official Sigma Male right now. Why? Because we're building a community of men who refuse to settle for average, who think independently, and who understand that true strength is quiet, confident, and doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and let me know in the comments which of these phrases you've heard most often in your environment. Your journey to authentic Sigma status starts now. Until next time, stay strong, stay independent, and remember, the wolf doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep.